hype about living the dream? It's time for truth. This is the place for tools, power, and real talk so you can create the life you dream and deserve. Your ultimate life. Subscribe, share, create. You have infinite power.
Hey there, welcome to this episode of Your Ultimate Life. I said this title would be, What's Your Message? What is your message? And you see, I've got this picture, and again, like always, I hope you're watching the video. This dude behind me there, he's got a stadium full of people. I don't know how many are in that, but at least 70, 80, maybe 100,000. And he's got a message. You know, maybe it's in song, music, maybe it's speaking. But people, they have filled the stadium to hear that message. Now, you might think you don't have a message that would fill a stadium, and you're free to think that, and if you believe you don't, then you don't. But the opposite is also true. If you believe that you have a message that should fill a stadium because of its importance, its ability to make a big difference in the world, then you have one. I do, and I'm going to talk about mine a little bit, but the purpose of talking about mine is to help you make a choice about what your message is. Now, maybe you're a person that doesn't care about that. You don't want to have a message, and you don't want to have a big impact for good, do something that matters in the world. You know, the last episode, the one just before this, I had a special guest, Michael Klepacz, who is in Poland, and he talked a lot about, if you haven't listened to that, you need to go back and listen to the one episode before this, his purpose, what's driving him, and how he's been able to use that to create a life that he loves, where he has fun in living his life. He's enjoying it. And, you know, that thing that I keep calling your ultimate life, purpose, prosperity, and joy, he has that. And there's another one. You know, I live that life. I love every day. Literally, I love it. I love it when people ask me how I'm doing, because the true answer is it's the best day of my life. The true answer is I am fabulous. I'm grateful. I have that experience. You know how that feels, that experience of gratitude and excitement about the day. I have that every flipping day. And yeah, I might be insane. Michael mentioned that. People say I'm crazy. And I said, you know, get a t-shirt that says, people say I'm crazy. And then underneath, and I am. Like, you know, we're free to live in the box. And the box is do what you're supposed to, get a skill, get a job, make a bunch of money. The more you make, the cooler you are, the more crap you have. And that somehow brings happiness. Well, most people that I've talked to have lived long enough to realize that's a crock. That is simply not true. You can have all the stuff in the world and it doesn't bring happiness, which is that deep sense of, I flip and love my life. And that's all this is about. So if you're, and I have all kinds of interesting guests. The one that I'm going to have next episode is a lot of fun too. And, you know, there was a time when I did 7 or 8 solo podcasts in a row, like when I was talking about fear and was talking about building a business. And now we're going into an area for the next 2 or 3 or 4 months where we're going to have a guest a week. And then I'll do an episode in between, often talking more about some of the things raised on their episode. And that's why I want to talk about your message today. One of the things that Michael noted in his work is sustainability, helping us save, you know, people, the planet, as well as profit, meaning you make money by adding good to the world, and you do it in a sustainable way. And one of the big bugaboos that he was talking about was microplastics, and how nearly all of the things we use plastic for can be replaced by other things. And in that replacement, make a huge difference in the planet and global warming and, you know, the atmosphere and microplastics that are, you know, filling up our bodies as well as our oceans. Today, I want to ask you, what is your message? Maybe you don't know, and that's okay. Maybe your thought is, I'm just trying to get by. I'm just trying to get through the day, the week, the month, the year. Or maybe you've had some really crappy things happen. And so your thought is, I'm really just trying to get past this train that ran over my life. I certainly empathize with that. I was talking to somebody just yesterday who said to me, a client, they had just been in a situation where someone close to them was suffering deep dementia and on their very last stages of life. So in that moment, in that call yesterday, the feeling was, I'm just trying to get past this train that ran over my life. Okay. And sometimes that's where we are. And maybe you feel like that you're there all the time. Stuff happens. Like this person, this close acquaintance or personal friend of them, was sick, meaning afflicted with dementia and dying. And that can't be changed. You know, my client can't flip a switch or click their fingers and change that. So externalities happen, and those externalities affect us. And all the talking that I do here about creating your life, which you do every moment, every time, in every circumstances, no exceptions, none, period. That creation process is still affected by those externalities. So you have someone close to you that's dying, and where death is very likely in a day, a week, or maybe a month or something, you know, some short period of time right on the horizon, staring you in the face. You still create your life and create your experience in relation to that death and passing. Now, you might argue, you know, that's pretending it away, and no, I'm not. Maybe the creation of it, the experience, involves real grieving for that loss, while at the same time saying, how am I going to use the special memories of the relationship to bless others? How am I going to use the special memories of this relationship, which is changing? It's not ending. Nobody dies. We go somewhere else. You know that. You feel it in your heart. This person's going somewhere else, so our relationship's going to change. How can I use the memories of that to honor them on a continuing basis? How can I use the memories of them to build up my own life so that I'm a better person? Because they lived, I knew them, and now they've moved on. And one of the realities about the circle of life has hit me in the face. Or I can simply say, they're passing. My grief is overwhelming. I can't do anything. I'm dead. I'm going to sit in a puddle. I'm finished. You can do that too. And what I'm suggesting is all of that is a conscious choice, or can be. If we're not used to taking ownership, then we can say, this stuff happened. I can't do anything about it. I'm just destroyed. This train ran over my life. If you're not used to owning your life fiercely, like having your hands on the controls, then an externality like someone dying can feel like that. I'm suggesting to you a possibility that's a reframe. It's not a glib thing. It's not a Pollyanna thing. It's not a flip of a switch. But you can reframe your life in a way that says, all this stuff's happening around me, in me, to me, for me, whatever language you want to use, and I get to choose how it affects me. And if you haven't done that, that's going to seem hard as hell and impossible and maybe nonsensical. But if you start with small things, let's do a silly one. You're driving and someone is rude to you on the road, cuts you off, doesn't see you, flips you off, or does whatever, right? However you responded to that before, and maybe you already don't respond to that. But I know people, many, and you do too, who if that happens, there's an emotional reaction immediately. You get indignant. You want to flip them off back maybe, or, you know, road rage, not you, but somebody follows them and, you know, gets out and yells at them or beats them up or does some stupidity. That is a choice. And you can start with something that's like that, rude to you in the store, on the road. And there, begin to exercise your choice. Okay? This that I'm teaching right now is part of my message. So the title of this episode is What's Your Message? And the last episode was a message of sustainability, of self-creation, of building the life you want. If you listen to that, you'll see Michael exactly is creating and has created the life he wanted, with steps forward, steps back, being stepped on, and all the rest. And you'll hear the stories. Let's go back to our person on the road. So if your habit is to an immediate reaction, they made me mad, that flippin' jerk who was rude, etc. Now, because you know this, and we've had just this short conversation, I'm inviting you to do something else, which says, okay, I feel mad. And then to say, okay, I'm not pretending I don't. I'm not trying to beat down my feelings. I acknowledge it. That frightened me because maybe they were really close and scared you for a moment. Okay, now what? This is where you get to stop. Insert the wedge. Scott Carney wrote a book called The Wedge, and that's the actual moment that exists between stimulus and response. And unless you're aware of that, most of the time you don't know it. You don't know it. And it just goes by, and you go from stimulus to response, input to action. There is a moment there, and you can expand that moment just by being aware there is one. I did this with someone the other day. I was having an interview with someone, and this one wasn't an episode that wasn't recorded. And they had a habit of using a particular stop word. And their particular stop word was kinda. I'm kinda doing this and kinda that. And so after we talked for a while, I said, can I give you a suggestion? And they said, yeah. And I said, I notice you say kinda this, that. And they nodded and agreed. And I said, so you can do that. You're free to communicate that way. I'm not pretending it's wrong. What I am suggesting is that it reduces the power. It reduces the clarity and power of your communication. So I would invite you to stop using that word, because I want for you that your communication has more clarity and power. So they accepted it graciously. And I asked first, is it okay if I give you a thought? And for the rest of that conversation, which was another 20 or 30 minutes, they only said it once, maybe twice, can't remember. And it changed viscerally for them. And the only reason is because they made a choice to find the wedge the moment before they would have inserted that stop word. Now, there's a whole episode that we could do on communication, on speaking, on stop words, on space, on feeling the power of words. We're not going to do that right now. My point is to illustrate that just by thinking about it, it's stopped nearly 100%. If that individual continued to think about it, in 2 days, it would be gone. So the reason that's important is because the wedge that I'm talking about, which is the momentary decision point between stimulus and response, you have it. Everyone has it. And it may be that it's rusty or you're not using it, but I'm inviting you to become aware of it. And if you focus on that right now and say, I'm going to become aware of that, in a day or two, you'll realize every single time you have that opportunity. Now, let's go back to someone dying. Someone dies, you hear the news. And if you've been practicing this idea of a wedge, meaning a moment between the stimulus and your response, you'll be aware of it instantly. And you'll get to decide what to do with the sense of loss. The loss is real, assuming it's someone you had a meaningful relationship with, and the loss is real. So the loss is real. We're not pretending that away. What you get to decide is what to do with the grief. I'm just going to sit here and feel that for a day, turn off my phone, cancel all my appointments, and experience this loss. Intentionally, I'm going to chew it over. I'm going to weep. I'm going to sit in a corner. I'm going to experience this loss. Like you could choose to do that. But then it becomes a choice. And then you can say, and I'm going to choose to honor that person with a social post or in my conversations for the next 30 days. So-and-so's passed, and I'm honoring them because of whatever impression or meaning they had in your life. You could dedicate a song to them. You could do a lot of things as you choose how to both process and move forward from that fact of the loss. So when I say I have a message, the message that I have is you create your life. You create it by how you choose, with that moment of wedge, how you choose to interpret and live with all the stuff that happens around you, one, and two, how you choose and express who you are. Those are the two ingredients in creating your life. How you choose to interpret and respond to all the stuff that happens around you, plus how you choose to express, to decide and express who you're being. Now let's talk about that, who you're being, because it's a part of my message. The fundamental truth is you're a divine creation. You're not an accident. You were created lovingly, intentionally by God, or whatever you call that force. You were created by God. That inner essence of energy and consciousness, that was created by God. Now, your body was created by your parents, but your spirit was created by the divine, which means you're the child of a divine. What that also means is that you have the embryonic capability of a divine being. That means the spiritual DNA in you is divine. That means you have attributes and capability and opportunity that comes from being a divine soul that you wouldn't have if you were the offspring of a cow. No offense to cows. So I want you to just consider what that means. You're a divine being. Now, here's where you choose. Remember, I said there's two elements that go into how you create your life. One is how you choose to interpret and respond to externalities, and then what you choose to declare or decide about who you are and how you express that in the world. So those are the ingredients, and we're on the side of, declaring and expressing who you already are. That is often a default position. You don't think about it, and so we act only in response to stimulus, and that response is determined by our past experience. So we have whatever experiences we have, that programs responses to certain situations, and we go through life responding to these situations. And that is how we're using that precious gift of choice that we have about creating our life. So I'm going to present a whole new way for you. Remember, there's two big elements. One is externalities, things that people do, that the universe does, that the weather does, that God does. All those things happen around you, and how you choose to see them and what you do with them is one group of ingredients in how you create your life. And the other one is what you choose, who you declare yourself to be, what you choose to be, and how you choose to express that being. Those four things are all there is in creating your life. And you have control over all of them, which means 100% without question or exception, you create your life. Now, I'd invite you, instead of arguing with that idea, which maybe you're not, is to, for the purposes of this episode, at least accept that idea. For the sake of argument, just accept it. Wow, I create my life, and that creation consists of four things. Thing one, how I interpret, and thing two, how I respond to all the externalities, which is everything people do and the weather does and everything outside of you. How I interpret it and how I respond to it. That's ingredient 1 and 2. And maybe it's 3 and 4. because that's affected by the first two. Let's make that 3 and 4. Ingredients 1 and 2 is how I choose what I choose that I am. So that might sound nebulous. So I'm going to give you one idea. One of my declarations of who I am is I am a son of Almighty God. I know that. I choose it. I own it. That's who I am, period. Oh, wow. So everything else is in the context of me being a son of God and you being a son or daughter of God. Wow. If we know we are that, we have divine offspring, we are divine offspring, that gives us a whole different set of lenses, a whole different set of glasses through which we see life. If something happens and I would perhaps normally get mad, if I remember that I'm a son of God, that might change. In fact, I hope that it does every time for me, change reactions I choose to have. So item 1, when you create your life, 4 things. And remember, this episode is what is the message? What is the message that I am or you are putting into the world? And are we doing it on purpose or accidentally? So ingredient 1 is what I'd say I am. And I gave you one piece of it. I have a document called a PTAC, Personal Truth and Commitment. And if you want to learn what mine is, that doesn't matter. But if you want to learn how to create one, and one that is so powerful that it sets your heart on fire and ties your soul to the center of the universe and makes your heart explode with joy every time you read it, then get a book called Living with Purpose and Power. Living with Purpose and Power. One more time, Living with Purpose and Power. It's the latest book of 20 that I wrote, and it came from my own experience about this kind of declaration, deciding really, truly who you are. And I shared one line is an acknowledgement that I'm a son of God, and so are you, son or daughter. Fabulous. Well, that knowledge alone changes a lot about how I see everything and who I am in the world. So ingredient number 1 is who I declare myself to be, which isn't limited by anything. I don't need anybody's agreement or anybody's permission. It's not about sounding good or being impressive. It's just about you and me in our heart of hearts deciding who we are and then declaring it. And number 2, how I choose to express those truths, that declaration. So we'll go back to I'm a son of God. I choose to express that in being as much like the Creator as possible. A creator, creating things, love, understanding, being kind, being willing to allow people to be who they are and where they are. God doesn't try to force me to do things. So I don't either. I have forgiveness. One of my declarations is I am forgiveness with compassion, grace, and patience for everyone, for everything. And that is one of my statements because my perception as being a son or daughter of God is that that's a true thing from that heritage. So the fact that I'm a son and you are a son or daughter of God is a powerful place to begin to declare who you are. And one of the declarations that flows from that is I am forgiveness. The second ingredient is how I choose to express that being in the world. So I can say one of my declarations is I am love. And again, that comes from being a son of God because God is love. And so I am love. And then I add to it, pouring over your soul like warm sunshine. So the way I express that truth is I run around trying to be love to people, pouring over their soul like warm sunshine to create miracles in the moment. And that doesn't mean giving everybody stuff or being a doormat. It doesn't mean any of that disempowering crap. It means how do I express love for them? How do I express encouragement, acceptance? And my motivation to do that is I'm a son of God and I am love. So I choose to express that. And so I would invite you in those first 2 ingredients. Who are you? What are your statements of being that you own fiercely, furiously, that are yours and yours alone because you said so? That's it. You're the sovereign. You make a declaration about who you are. Now, your being a child of the divine is not negotiable. You are. You can do whatever you want with it. And that goes to the second ingredient. How is that going to be expressed in the world? So I'm a son of God. I am love pouring over your soul like warm sunshine to create miracles in the moment. Because I know love is the power that holds everything together, and love has the ability to create miracles. Sometimes we need to do a lot of work with it. We don't just snap our fingers. It's not magic one time. But that love, that caring, that willingness to sacrifice and serve, that does and can and will create miracles. So there's ingredients 1 and 2 about creating your life, which is what you declare yourself to be and how that characteristic or beingness shows up in the world, in every interaction, in every statement, in every internal thought. See, remembering I'm a son of God then gets in the way of me saying negative things to myself. I'm a dirtbag. I forgot to do this. I shouldn't have done that. That's out the window. If I say or do something, and we all do because nobody's perfect, that I don't think's in line with the I'm a son of God thing, then that means I've got to clean something up and recommit. I've got to take ownership, fess up, clean it up, and recommit. And that would be in line with being a son of the Almighty or a daughter. So the first 2 ingredients are a declaration of who you are. And the cool thing is you get to decide that. Now, there's some things that are non-negotiable. You're a child of the divine, period. You can't do anything about that. You get to decide how that fact is manifest through you in the world. You don't get to choose how somebody else manifests it. But believe me, there's enough work for each of us to do about how we're going to manifest those truths. So the declaration of who you are, and my PTAC is 3,500 words long. So there's a lot of nuances, and I get into some specifics because I want to. It's my own personal agreement, declaration, credo, manifesto with God, and so I've declared who I am. And in that document, I also make declarations about how that is manifest through me in the world. So I'd invite you to consider that. You're divine. That means your capability is infinite, and your possibility is infinite in terms of what you can create. You can access love, you can access the power of the universe, and create anything you want. So, and you get to choose also whether you do that or not. So there's the first 2 ingredients. How you become aware of and declare who you are, and then how you decide to have that show up in every circumstance, in every conversation, in every moment of your life. And I call that your being, who you are being all the time. Now, that's the first 2 ingredients. The second 2 ingredients are how you interpret and respond to externalities. And externalities are all those things that you don't control. What others think, what they say, what they do, what the weather does, what the economy does, whether or not an asteroid hits the earth, all of those things that involve items you personally don't control, they go into the second group of ways that you and me, we create our lives. Stuff happens. It's going to every day, 100 times a day, 500 times a day. And you and I have the great blessing of choosing how we respond to that, how I interpret it. So someone says something, cuts me off on the road. That was the example. I interpret that as them being rude, stupid, not knowing how to drive, and thinking they own the whole damn road. I interpret it that way. Then my response is to honk, flip them off, stew, not do any of that, but stew in my own mind, create the neurotransmitters of anger, whatever. Or I can interpret that as maybe they didn't see me. Maybe they really are in a hurry. Maybe they just had a death in the family and they're just flipping, not paying attention. Maybe I'm just grateful we didn't get in an accident. That interpretation is a choice. And believe me, for me at least, that was a hard lesson to learn because I was so programmed in my own experiences to believe that my immediate reactions, my programmed reactions were true and right, when the truth is that's just my interpretation. I actually don't know what they're thinking, what's going on with them. I have no idea. But I choose to say they're just a rude pig that doesn't know how to drive and they're not paying attention, or they think they're more important. I choose that. And then that drives a set of reactions internally and externally. Learning when I learned that I didn't actually have to do any of that, and that whatever I'd learned before about reactions was under my control, and I can just delete all those, like emptying your wastebasket on the computer desktop. You can just empty it. Now, it takes some work. You have to make some conscious choices. But the first line of defense is, what if we just stopped interpreting things that are going on around us? Stop making up stories. That's step one. Step two is more difficult, but to start with, just pay attention. I'm interpreting. I'm assigning meaning to someone else's speech, behavior, lack thereof. I'm assigning meaning to the weather. I'm assigning meaning universe is conspiring against me. I'm assigning meaning the election didn't go the way I wanted, and therefore the world's going to be a catastrophe. I'm assigning all that meaning. And your first step is just to pay attention. Where am I assigning meaning? I'm making up stories about that. So step one in owning the control you have of your life, when we're talking about the second bucket of things, is just listen to your stories. Listen to the interpretations. They put them in jail. Good. That's an interpretation. And I'm not saying every interpretation of everything is suspect. What I am saying is make sure that they're intentional. Make sure that you're owning those on purpose. And then ask yourself, is this the highest and best use of my time, talents? Is it adding good to the world? When we don't become aware of the automatic interpretations, we don't have time to say any of that. We don't take time to think through any of those interpretations of events, from the weather to politics to news on TV and garbage on television, or what someone says to us. We get a bill from the tax collector, whatever it is. We create a feeling around that. I'm simply asking you to be aware of that creation and not have it be automatic. The thought is, well, how else would you feel about getting a tax assessment notice from the IRS, or in Canada, it's the CRA, Canada Revenue Agency? Well, I could feel a lot of ways. I've conditioned myself to be suspect, angry, frustrated, and negative, but I could feel a lot of ways. I could be neutral. Let's just see what it is. Maybe they're right. Instead of simply, they're wrong, stupid, this is wrong. Oh no, I'm going to, whatever. So be aware of the interpretation. And you'll find that you do that 500 or 600 times a day at least. You create interpretations of events, natural events and man-made events. So just be aware of that. And the second thing is that wedge idea, the moment between stimulus and response. You actually get to choose your response. Someone may do something that you feel puts you in danger. Your brain secretes adrenaline. You go into fight or flight mode, and you're uptight, you're focused. And then you have a moment to decide, am I going to beat somebody up? Am I going to run away? What am I going to do? And just by, again, the focus, it increases the space of that wedge, the size, the time dimension grows from 0, if you're not doing this practice, to a half second, 1 second. When you become more aware of it, it's as long as you want. I'm going to think about this for a minute. I'm going to think about what I'm going to wish I'd done tomorrow or in a month. What, if I can project myself to a month from now, what am I going to wish I'd done about this right now? So think about 4 ingredients to control your life. So this is my message. I'm a messenger, I'm a creator, and I'm an alchemist. I help you create your ultimate life, the life that's everything you dream. Today, I'm just talking about the message part of that. The message is you're a divine being. That means you have divine DNA and capabilities. And that means you have an infinite creative possibility in the palms of your hands. If you're not aware of that or haven't trained yourself, then you're squandering it. That's okay. You can change that right now. Now, the assertion is that you create your life, and that's part of the message. As a divine being, you're the creator. You create your life. And we talked about 4 ingredients that go into that. Ingredient number 1 is a conscious choice and declaration of who you are, a conscious choice about how that being walks through the world in every interaction, a conscious choice about how you interpret every externality, and then a conscious choice about how you're going to act on those interpretations. Those 4 ingredients is all there is. If you think even medium deeply about every single possible event, that covers every one of them. And those 4 ingredients are the things we use to create our life experience. I don't create whether or not my leg breaks if I get run over. That may happen. The creation of my life is how I interpret that event and what I do about it, because that determines my experience. All right. So another piece of the message that I have is you're divine. You have the divine capability. And then I said your possibility is infinite. So since that's true, the question is, what are you going to do with infinite possibility? So let's use an interesting sort of 3D in the world example. Someone wins $50 million in a lottery. Somebody plays the lotto and they win. I've never played it in any state, country, or anything, just because I make a choice to not do that. But let's say someone wins $50 million. Then the thought would be, what are you going to do with that? That's a visioning exercise. And your first thought might be, take a trip, give some money to people, pay off all my debts, be rich and buy cool stuff. Okay. And without a vision, that your money will be gone in no time. And there are tons of examples of people who've inherited wealth or won lotteries and stuff. In a very short period of time, they're broke and worse off than before it happened. And that's because there's no vision. So when you understand that the 4 things that create your life is knowing who you are, choosing how that shows up, choosing how you interpret externalities, and then how you act on those. And you can then say, okay, I'm going to make all those decisions in the context of a vision of who I am and where I want to be. So if you don't feel like your life is satisfying you right now, like you do, but you say, I'd like to have more money. I'd like to have more resources. I do. I want more resources. I have a goal of reaching 300 million people right now. I don't know how I'm going to do that. And I don't know if I have the resources to make that happen in the next 10 months. My year started October 14th. I'm recording this in December. You'll hear it in February. By the time you hear it, 4 of my 12 months will be gone. So as I sit here right now, I don't know exactly how to do that. But I have a vision that's bulletproof and clear. I have a vision of reaching 300 million people with the message that I have of divinity, capability, and possibility, of your ability to create your life if you want to. Now, if you hear all this and you think it's a bunch of crap and you don't want to worry about it, you're free to do that. And then what will inevitably happen is your life will create you. The automatic interpretation of events will happen. You will live into the societal message that you're not good enough and you can't do this and you can't create, and you had a bad deal and you got dealt a raw hand and all the rest. And that will create you. Like those forces will create you unless you exercise sovereign control. So when I look at my vision, I have a vision like the stadium behind me. I have a vision of 300 million people hearing, and it's really not just my message, like the person I had last episode and what I'm going to have next episode, they have messages, but every messenger that I have on my shows has a message of hope, of creation, of possibility, of building, You know what I mean? They're about adding good to the world. So I love sharing and amplifying their messages too, because I want their message to affect millions, and they count in my 300 million. And because I love doing it, and because the message of change and growth and possibility needs to be said as many ways as possible, because only certain people are going to resonate with my voice, and certain will resonate with Michael's or yours. So here's an invitation. If you're a messenger, and part of your choice of how you're walking through the world is to spread a message of hope, growth, possibility, creation, I want to talk to you because I'd like to have you on the show, because I want to spread your message of hope, possibility, creation, taking control of your life, and whatever language you use to articulate those eternal concepts. So the message is your vision matters. It won't create itself. And any and every effort you use to create, crystallize, and get really clear on your vision is worth it, because a clear vision is super compelling and super powerful. A clear vision is one that's easy to enroll people in. So let me ask you a question. If you knew that every single struggle, every betrayal, every difficulty, every illness, every bankruptcy, every negative thing that happened to you was actually a really good thing, and it helped you develop resilience and power and capability, and you knew that, then every negative, quote, negative thing that happened, you'd say, bring it on. I'm going to conquer this one. It's going to be another building block. If you don't know that, then you say, every negative thing, it sucks. How come this happens to me? And again, that's interpretation. So imagine that you knew absolutely true that every developmental challenge, struggle, betrayal, whatever it was that happened to you was a rocket booster, was power. It would change the way you act. You'd act with more boldness, clarity. Nobody would complain because you wouldn't complain because you knew that was to help you. It would completely change how you show up in the world. Now imagine if a stadium full like this 100,000 or so people behind me had that same knowledge that every difficulty, from finding a place to park to their aunt's illness to their cousin dying suddenly of whatever to a friend's suicide, every event has the potential to be a building block, stepping stone, rocket booster in your life. Imagine what that would do if 100,000 people knew that and then behaved that way. The love, the power, the growth that would happen. It's crazy to think about that. So I've given you my message. You create your life. You're a divine being. You can do anything you want with it. I've told you the 4 ingredients of creating your life. Since you have divine DNA, your capability is divine, infinite. The possibility that you have to create good in the world, money in your bank account, and absolute overwhelming and supercharged joy in your life is also infinite. So the question for all of us right now is, now that you know that, you're in a place to do one of two things: ignore it or do something with it. You can't do anything else. If you make excuses and say, yeah, that might be true for some, but it's not true for me, that's ignoring it. Because you came from the same place I do, and all of us did. You have the same divine heritage and the same ability to make a difference in the world. Your choice, henceforth and forever, is ignore it or do something with it. I've shared with you my message. I'd love to hear yours. I invite you to connect with me so I can hear yours. If you're doubtful about what your mission or message is, but you feel the yearning to have one, let's talk. I am the world-class expert at helping you find your mission and message. So let's talk. That's all I do, because my message to 300 million is to help you find that thing, be energized by it, and then jump into the game of changing the world for the better. So you can ignore what we talked about. Even though it has the ring of truth in you, you can make up excuses and ignore it. Or you can say, you know what? It's time. I'm done. I invite you to do that latter. Latter, not ladder. to take control of your life, to create it the way you want, to declare your mission, and then get after it with all your heart. And create purpose, prosperity, and joy, and then fully live your ultimate life.
Never hold back and you'll never ask why. Open your heart and this time around.
Right here, right now. Your opportunity for massive growth is right in front of you. Every episode gives you practical tips and practices that will change everything. If you want to know more, go to KellanFluckigerMedia.com. If you want more free tools, go here, YourUltimateLife.ca. Subscribe, share.
Stand with your heart in the sky and your